Exactly. I mean, look, I think it's not unusual for an administration to be brainstorming about possible ways to combat a possible recession. For what it's worth, PIMCO doesn't see a recession necessarily over the next 12 months as likely. But I think this should be expected. Now, White House brainstorming is very different from actually seeing this pass Congress. And I think there is very little chance that we see a preemptive tax cut pass its way through the House or the Senate, for that matter. I'm not sure that Majority Leader Mitch McConnell would be very supportive of more deficit financing at this point when the economy is still, maybe slowing, but it's still relatively robust. So I think that kind of bottom line here, very little chance we see any sort of fiscal stimulus in the next year.
How about the Greenland stimulus package? That would be right. That might help a lot, But
right.
So the president has been taking on Fed Chair Powell and the Federal Reserve a lot. What is your view or PIMCO's view of where interest rates settle?
Well, look, we probably will get some sort of indication at Jackson Hole, later this month. We think that you sort of have to take Fed Chairman Powell at his word, that he's looking at the data, that he's looking at sort of policy uncertainty. He interestingly mentioned trade policy uncertainty several times in his press conference back in July.
Sure did.
And if this does escalate with China, then I think we can see the Fed respond in kind, and I think we need to take Chairman Powell at his word for that.
Is there any political risk behind Chairman Powell losing support on the part of Congress? The more the administration talks against Powell, the more the public might question Powell, the more Congress people might get questions from their constituents.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the reality, though, is quite different, at least for now, in terms of especially the senators' support. You see that in the testimony, both in the Senate and the House side, when Jay Powell was in front of both committees for his Humphrey Hawkins testimony, there was a lot of support for him. And I think Democrats especially, but also some Republicans, said that the Fed independence is sacrosanct, that we will sort of defend you and sort of continue to do what you're doing, looking at data and being independent as possible.
Huge demonstration in Hong Kong over the weekend. Thankfully, it was peaceful. If that situation devolves, does that imperil or completely take off the table a trade settlement?
Well, look, it's been interesting because President Trump more or less hasn't really made human rights central to these trade negotiations. That's very important to Vice President Pence and some other folks in the administration. But in terms of what President Trump has been focused on, it's been mostly trade issues. However, if Hong Kong does escalate, I think he has no choice but to make this more central to a deal. And yes, I think that means that the chances for a deal are much lower.